All right, welcome back. Another episode, Make Hazmat Great Again. We've got two amazing guests today, personal friends of ours, and just all around great dudes. Chief Matt Wilcox from Maplewood and Josh Phillips from City Fire, City of St. Louis. So welcome, guys. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Very good, very good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, guys. I don't know which one of you guys want to start with some intros. If Chief Wilcox wants to let the real city squad guy
City's got to go first, man.
Yeah.
City's got to go first.
Yeah.
Got to hear all about it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You sure the white helmet doesn't want to lead off?
Oh, no, man. No, man. I got nothing compared to, Squad 1A. Let's hear it.
Here we go.
I'm sure we can hear on Squad 1's better than Squad 2. So that's
absolutely the truth.
Yeah,
That's why it's called the #1 rescue squad in the city.
There you go.
So,
That's what I hear from Mario all the time. So,
Bombero, he's a good one.
Josh, tell us about yourself. Years of service, where all of you worked, how long you been on Squad 1, stuff in the city, and just kind of tell us about yourself real quick. What got you here today?
All right. I've been with the City of St. Louis Fire Department for coming on 18 years now. I worked up on the north side of St. Louis, the 24s. Natural Bridge and Kings Highway, or Natural Bridge and Union, for about my first 7 years, which was a wild ride. But I had the opportunity to come to Rescue Squad 1. I guess it was in 14, so I've been there. This January will be 11 years that I've been assigned to Rescue Squad 1. So it's been a great opportunity. Got to work with some awesome individuals, so I'm happy to be there. And thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah. Tell us about some hazmat experience that you have. Does Squad 1 do much of the hazmat with Squad 2, or do you guys?
So we don't do a whole lot. We'll do some small things, like we'll plug some holes and we'll stop some leaks, and we'll do some small like vehicle accident or 18-wheeler type of stuff. But that's mainly Squad 2's responsibilities. Squad 2 is rescue, heavy rescue, some rope rescue and things like that, and then hazmat. We're more of the USAR side of it. We're the confined space, structural collapse, trench, swift water, dive, boat. We're all that. And probably a little bit more rope savvy, I'd like to say. They may disagree, but so.
That sounds great. I might dive in a little bit more since we were talking earlier about the TAC medic stuff too. If you guys handle much of the hazmat stuff with there. So we'll save that for later on if Nick allows it with some of the conversation stuff. So I know in the county team, we've dove into some of that with some stuff coming down the line. So, but
cool. I'd love to hear that too.
Yeah. Chief Wilcox, how about yourself, bud?
Matt Wilcox works at the city of Maplewood. Been there 15 years. Started as a private, worked my way up.
You look a lot older than that.
I know, man. I know. It's having friends down at the city, though, man. They age you quick. Been the assistant chief for about 3 years. Oversee training and operations. We have a heavy rescue and a pumper that we run, and then help out with the county USAR team with training, kind of getting all that scheduled and building the training plan and so forth.
Chief, while we're on you tell us a little bit about Maplewood. You guys said you run your heavy rescue, kind of do some of the county USAR stuff, and then I know I've been on some hazmat calls with you. What's kind of your experience and kind of a little bit with Maplewood, like size of your department? And
so just call me Matt. That's I don't need that. But so Maplewood, there's 21 people, fire chief, myself, 3 crews of 6. We have a full-size heavy rescue. It's kind of a regional truck down in the central core area. We assist a bunch of agencies down there with first alarms, vehicle accidents, rescues. It's on their first alarms. Then we also run a rescue pumper, runs down there. Maplewood's about 1.8 square miles, so it does a lot of mutual aid. So we have a new one coming on the way. It'll be bigger and kind of will be a bigger county asset. Kyle, we've been doing a bunch of stuff with you guys. So just you guys, West County, doing stuff with Monarch, just trying to get more of the heavy rescues involved in the county towards that. Hazmat wise, I am a hazmat tech on paper. I've gone to a couple calls to assist, And I was lucky enough to make a completely blind entry in the back of a truck that was leaking some fluid with Kristen, I believe, yeah, from Creve Corps. So that was my first entry. So we'll see if I go to another hazmat call when you guys are, to be honest. Andy
Hey
got
man, you saved the day on that one.
yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah,
we'll go with that.
Moving some stuff around that box truck.
Yeah, we'll go with that. But as far as hazmat, Maplewood does mainly operational stuff. But we're talking about trying to assist the team with manpower or something else with whatever they need from there.
Yeah, I got to figure out how to get our squad pimped out like you guys do yours. Like I saw it going way up North County the other day on some fires. Like I had to talk to our chiefs on how to figure that one out. So
we're very fortunate. Our fire chief supports that truck and wants to grow that truck and make that the primary focus of the department. And he said basically just put it on whatever run card you want. So I just started knocking on doors, just saying, hey, here's an extra resource. It's like a utility player. Something happens, they're there. Their manpower to do whatever you need. Roll hose, stand in the yard, RIT, overhaul, suppression, search, whatever. And it actually took off pretty well. So it goes all the way up to community. Then it's got community, mid-county, Olivet, U-City. Then we got the Central Core. And then it goes as far south as Afton and Lima. So it's a pretty busy truck. The guys enjoy it. They're busy. There are times they don't sleep, but they got a bigger fire load, so they're happy about that.
Hell yeah, that's how you get work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good for them. It's good for the department. It's no squad 1A, but we're trying.
I like it. I'm happy you guys are doing this. I think it's healthy. I think it's good, and hopefully we start maybe playing a little bit better with you guys in the future, and maybe get a little competition in good-natured competition. You know what I mean? And because I know that's always been a thing from city to county, at least here in St. Louis, is that's always been known. The city of St. Louis Fire Department doesn't play all that nicely with others. We, like you'd said earlier, Chief, that we're proud, so to speak. So you guys are always invited into things that are near the line, but we don't like to let you take any of our work away from us. So, but I am looking forward to your guys' having another allocated resource of a heavy rescue squad that are, and I can say this too, if you guys don't know this, but Wilcox's guys that are assigned to this, like he said, his chief and him himself, they support their guys so well. Those guys are trained up and they are studs. So yeah. I'm happy and proud to have them next door to us. And like I said, I hope they get to come in and play with us more often, or maybe we can start doing some trainings together, put some scenario-based trainings together, and start actually, putting these skills to use and a little competitiveness. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
So. I appreciate that. Yeah. No, we've done some trainings. You guys came out to the bridge. Kyle, I think one of your shifts came out to the bridge, the JB bridge. Then we were all out at the mall, so we got some of that stuff done. And then
Six Flags and
yeah. So we've been good as far as like the county doing more stuff as a whole, with city and the county doing that. So I think it's getting much better for everybody. And Nick and Kyle, you guys doing the hazmat stuff, you're going to see some good stuff coming out of that. So I think it's just it's younger, hungry individuals that just they want to do stuff. That they got in, they see there's a specialty there, they want to do it, and firemen just want to be firemen and just do fireman stuff. It sounds cliche, but I mean that's really what they want to do. And
it's true.
Take the leash off them and let them work, and they'll surprise you and they'll make you damn proud. And I can say with our department, they are doing phenomenal things. So I'm very happy with the way they're going.
I will say some of the training we've been doing over the last couple of years, it shows. Like we've actually had a couple decent call outs this year on the county side that you see guys show up at least on B shift and they don't even talk. Like it just like a flawless, everybody starts working and shit gets done. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
To watch some of the return. So
we were at I'm sorry, Chief. I was saying we were out at Six Flags. I'd asked Mario and a couple of the more senior guys that are on the city that came out to play. I was like, Have you ever had a mutual aid or a training like this ever in your career, in your 37 years in the job? And they're like, nope. So for me, and I can talk for them too, thank you for putting all that, doing all that legwork and building those relationships and helping build something for all of us that we get an opportunity to do that we otherwise wouldn't. So so thank you. Thank you, dickhead.
I appreciate it. That means a lot coming from you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you especially you, Wilcox, you're changing the game as far as USAR training, and
yes,
especially at the federal level too. Like me, Josh, and Matt are on the FEMA team, and you guys are killing it there too. So thank you, because it was sorely needed, and
yes, it was
just made it ready to make some progress.
A lot. It's not just me. There's a lot of people. A lot of people making at the federal level or local level, and there's a lot of people that make all that happen. So it's not one individual.
For sure. So yeah,
Josh, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just gonna get into like some USAR experience. Like I said, all three of us are part of that team, but you tell us about your experience there and maybe some cool deployments that you've been on, or some ones that you remember being notable.
I would say, we're talking about, this is a hazmat podcast. We always joked about hazmat scrub to boots and, did decon and whatever. And I really didn't understand the need. And this is just how naive I was. Well, I understood there was a need there, but we went down to Bollinger County for a tornado. It was us and Strike Team 5. And we're going down there. We're walking around, checking houses. It's about an hour and a half south from us. And I just remember we're all walking around and you hear what sounds like this high-pitched whistle just going off. And nobody can kind of figure out what it is. Well, come to believe it's a large propane tank off-gassing. And we didn't have anybody down there. We had hazmat techs. We had hazmat stuff. We didn't have anything. That started the conversation with Andy Sears, who you had on here before, your chief, basically to copy the federal model where there's 2 hazmat techs going down there and they can operate in whatever capacity, but their job is, like that tank's bleeding off. They can at least give us some insight as to what's going on. And then slowly after that, realizing how much hazmat is involved with rescue. It goes hand in hand with it. It's not just, if the environment's not safe, you got to figure out how to make it safe. There's a big portion of it.
For sure.
Yeah. I don't have a ton of experience with on the deployments because I've only been on a few deployments. I've been on a team for a decade now, but I've only had a handful of deployments, and I don't have any hazmat experiences to necessarily speak of, but to kind of piggyback off that, you do notice when you're out there in the field, everything is hazmat. Everything is a hot zone until it's proven otherwise. So it seemed like for a little while, to me anyway, maybe you guys can correct me on this, but from my experience, it seemed like hazmat was kind of being dumbed down federally quite a bit over the years. And I didn't understand why. I mean, I understand why money-wise, all that equipment's expensive, the training's expensive, all that stuff. But I didn't understand why it was being dumbed down like that, because like we just said, like a swiftwater event, a flood event, that's so much hazardous materials and fuel and all that. And like you're saying, propane tanks going down the river, like all of that is a hazardous materials situation. And I don't understand why it would ever be thought of to dumb that down. So that was just my experience at the time, was that how much I realized everything that we were doing, there was some sort of hazardous material involvement if you step back and looked at the big picture that way. So
yeah.
No, we look a lot of that stuff with like our dive stuff.
Yeah,
over where I work
100%.
at too, is like everything we dive is like in hazmat suits, and it's the same thing. When I first started that, just looking at that portion of it is like why are we diving in these fully encapsulated suits? And then you get out there and actually see, it's like, oh man, like it is like little stuff you never look at. And I actually think some of the swimming pools we dive in training are worse than some of the some of the rivers and lakes that I've been in. But yeah,
Right.
it is pretty neat when you sit back and look at the big picture of stuff. And like I always say, a lot of our guys, it's interesting. Everybody looks at that. You mentioned the nasty word hazmat, and it turns everybody off until you actually step back and look at the grand picture of it and what it involves with everything. Like even day-to-day operations of just the basic calls that we run, that trying to get that different viewpoint for everybody to actually let that soak in on what they're doing, and some of the training and everything comes along with that. So
I'm just going to share a quick picture that I took in, excuse me, North Carolina at one of the river crossings. You guys can see like what we're talking about.
That was a cute little slip you did.
It was nice. Like looking at pictures on your phone and you suddenly find something you're not supposed to see.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the flood water, and we're talking, you know, whatever. Everything is in there. Just take the, you know, contents of the last 10 square miles and put it into a blender and just dump it out. So just to kind of show listeners and viewers what we're talking about here. So
what's interesting about that, so we had a major flooding event in St. Louis 3 years ago. Like everybody flooded. Maplewood in particular, in between the Maplewood and Webster border, there's a concrete company, and they had huge totes of acetone and other chemicals that got into the creeks. Well, it ended up eating our suits. And once again, Hazmat reached out to Andy Sears. The DNR came out, whatever else. It started trashing our suits. We had to do a spiller pays claim. Some of the boats got replaced. Like it trashed everything.
Yeah, it's big money. Yeah,
it is big money, and it was great. We were able to get some updated stuff, not by choice, but something we else learned about that. So anytime they go in the water now, because of that picture you're showing, Nick, even if it's in a creek or whatever, it's a full decon for the suits inside and out, the boat, whatever else. But then we're also filling out exposure forms, which basically is just stating date, time, call, where it is. Even though, I mean, we still do a full report, but we do that exposure form just in case the suit tore, something got in there, they find out the water's nasty, whatever. And we keep those on record, which comes into hazmat again, right? Like you guys go down there, do your thing. You keep a record just in case somebody develops something way down the line, because like you don't know what's in that water. Everything from your people's yards, cars, dumpster, everything's in that water. It's nasty.
Yeah, and it seems like go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just going to bring up too, not in deployment wise, but just the Mississippi River. That's something we go, you know, we're heavy on that, and we go check our boats every cycle. We have a lot of jumpers off the bridges, and we've had quite a few barge fires the last few months on the river. But that river is nothing but a hazmat pool. I mean, it's I believe it's the second biggest inland port in the country. So tugboats and commercial materials and everything are getting pushed through there. Not to mention all the junk that's been in there for the last 100 years, maybe. But I see people fishing out there all the time, and it just kind of gives me a weird feeling on it. But I'm like, every time we jump in the river, I've always, you know, hopefully it happens more often, but we've had a few good captains that are good about it. But there should be an exposure report every time we get in that river. I mean, our boats sit down in that river year round. They don't get pulled out. So, and they wonder why these boats aren't running right, why things aren't, you know, functioning properly. There's so much stuff in that river. It's disgusting. It's like we said, we think about hazmat and all these circumstances are big hazmat incidents, but really it's all around us. Every fire we go to is a hazmat incident.
Yeah.
I mean, every material that gets burned off in there, we don't know all the materials that are in there. To this day, is all the testing actually done on all the plastics and things that are in every house that we do? I mean, it's to think that we're going to dumb down hazmat or cut costs that way, or be like, well, it's not as important, you know, it's silly to me. But
yeah, well, it just seems like all the disasters recently, they're all kind of flood related, you know, lately. You know, we don't get a lot of structural collapses, you know, knock on wood, or, you know, it's just not something that we do every day, but we're still training on that stuff. But man, I think the last probably 4 deployments I've had in the last 10 years have been all flood related, you know. None of them have been like earthquakes or, you know, a tornado is kind of the same story too. You just have all this crap on the ground now instead of in the water, and you have flood water too because of the storms. But
Yeah, the tornado in Kentucky that we went to, it was like 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Or something like that, 2 or 3 years, the Mayfield one.
Yeah.
I mean, it destroyed that town. And from a hazmat perspective, I mean, you're looking for remains, right? So human remains, decomposed, biohazard from there. But also think about all the chemicals in the house. Think about everything you store in your house, right?
Yep.
Odds of it getting mixed to create the magic potion, very unlikely. But you're crawling around, right? This is why they're telling you, hey, man, have your N95 on, put your gloves on, whatever. You're crawling around, which some of the buildings we had to because they said they got a hit. And then people are storing gas in there, fuel, propane, like I said, chemicals. Then after a little while, you get rotting food, so you can just get sick from that. So that's kind of where your meters come in and so forth, just to see what's going on. I mean, it's not just like the glowing liquid or the vapor cloud or something. The rescue side and hazmat go hand in hand, and we probably should do more with it, to be honest.
Yeah,
for sure. And it was just one more thing when you were talking about having to replace all those suits and boats that were, rubber based or
right,
whatever they're made of. We were just thinking about that in Katrina. I wasn't on the team at that point, but they lost all the tires, they lost all the brake lines on all the trucks, and that was a huge expense for the team and the system.
Yeah,
and weren't they replacing boots every day, right? And those are like $300 a pair of boots every day.
I wasn't there for that one. I know we went down to Harvey in Texas. They took our boat. Boots. We did not leave there with our boots. Our boots had to be thrown into trash bags and accounted for, and then we had new boots. And then I think more stringent policies on decon came out because I remember in North Carolina, we actually did the decon line where you walked out in a Tyvek suit, naked underneath. Like they made you strip down to nothing for a couple of days. It was terrible.
Wow.
Well, they didn't tell us the first day. They were just like, hey, get all the way down. They didn't give you your clothes, nothing. You just get this suit. And naturally, they didn't have towels. So, trying to put a Tyvek suit on when you're sweaty is a disaster. Right. So, yeah.
Right.
If you didn't have a rash from that bag you were wearing all day, you had one walking back to your boo.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We're talking about decon, so I know like the federal system before I got off of the hazmat side on the federal team, but we were kind of shifting to more decon focus. And we've always been a team, Missouri has, that cross trains. And come to find out, going out on different deployments, that wasn't the case. We ran with like Pennsylvania, and one guy was like, "No, man, I'm a driver. Like I'm not trained in rescue really. I got my CDL or whatever." But we always thought that was weird as Missouri guys, because like, oh, we can get a squad together from the logistics guys and a hazmat guy here or ground support, and we can be operational, just kind of force multiply. But I think as far as the county team that you're working on, Wilcox, with several others that are doing a great job, I think that's what we're kind of working towards, to where we can have just another rescue squad member that's hazmat trained that can do basically everything, and can do ropes, can do confined space and all that stuff, but is also supposed to be squared away on the metering and monitors and that kind of thing. Yeah.
The overall goal is, right now the plan is, Nick, there's a USAR call out. I believe there's 2 from your department that are coming, and you guys made go kits.
We did, yeah,
which are really cool. Just so we can get out the door quickly. The idea is they show up, they can help out, do all the skills, whatever. But their main job is when that meter starts going off, they need to know how to fix the problem. And their job is to tell them like, hey, we got to back up. Hey, we just need air. What do we need? Andy's probably coming with, so they can bounce things off of him. They can bounce things off command. But the idea is, as they're just uncovering something, if they encounter a pocket of gas or whatever, somebody's there to basically say, hey, you got to back up and then go from there. But they're fully operational with everything else. So ideally, we're shooting for 2. If we could get 1 per squad, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I know when we introduced that, like this last ORE last year is pretty, for having the squad and them showing up like, hey, here's your hazmat tech to go through and do all that. Like, it was a good concept. Like, I loved it. And I think that helped just doing the training part of it is several of my guys on our team that once again kind of opened their eyes of like, man, I'm just not going to jump in this hole and not think about what's down there. We're going to send this guy in first and really dive in as what we're going on and stuff like that. So that was a great concept for the training aspect of it. I think it continues to open eyes and show the realistic values of all this.
Well, and this is what like stemmed it, right? So we all were kids, we all played street hockey. What happens when your ball goes down the sewer? What'd we do? We popped the lid and we just went down there and got the ball, right? No big deal. Right. Well, as you get older and you get a little smarter, the guys, we used to when I first started, something goes down the sewer, you get it for the lady or whatever. Well, now it's like, hey man, before you do anything, we're popping it with a meter.
Yep.
Right. Simple things like that, because you don't know. There's stories after stories. You go down there, oh, he passed out. Oh, he's just tired, or oh, something happened. Whatever. We're gonna go get him. But yeah, it's very simple things, and to have somebody with that mindset is really what it is. Which is working out pretty well.
We actually had that same scenario talking about guy on my shift. I wasn't there, but he's working overtime somewhere. Same thing. Somebody called like, hey, I've got this. And they're just basically going to pop the sewer lid and send somebody down. And he's like, hey, drop the meter. And yeah, he's like 2 or 3 guys like, are you kidding me? Like, why are we doing all that? He's like, there's something down there. I mean, we're going down for a reason. And same thing. He goes, if anything, it's training. Like, why not get the meters out and drop them down and train like we would? And same thing, just kind of start getting that one person, start thinking ahead a little bit. Now it should be more common practice for everybody. Is like, hey, we're popping this thing, like just get the meters off and use them. So I've kind of like, not to go down a long meter thing, but I've got my guys doing the same thing on like, we were on a fire, like that smoke detector chirping in the house. Like they get off with the 5 gas now every single time, just because like you never know. Right. And then one more thing, like we can go in, especially this time of year, and just check that off and at least make the people feel more comfortable. Like me and Nick were talking earlier before we started about just taking care of like the politics side of stuff, and like the people who are actually there to protect. Like I feel as a company officer way better, like, yeah, your smoke detector was chirping, but hey, we checked for all this stuff on this meter too while we were here at your house and did that stuff, and just being safe, because you never know what you're going to get into at some of these places. So
yeah, that's definitely like value added, and everybody's looking for value these days. What are you doing for me for the money? For the tax money especially.
Yeah.
But, the one call that scares me the most, and because I know that we get complacent, is like a duck stuck in a sewer, a dog stuck in a sewer.
Yeah.
And we've had guys that, like, I've heard it go out like the other station, and then I'm like, hey man, did you shove a 4 gas down there before you got in? I was like, well, no. I'm like, just be careful, man. Like, that's gonna bite you one day, and you might not even know. But I know, Josh, in the city, you guys have a lot of underground hazards, including like electrical vaults, especially. Yep. I know you got a huge deal with that. But what is it kind of common practice for you guys to use a 4 gas and get down in there and clear it before you get in?
Well, first and foremost, you should say absolutely it is, but it's all crew dependent, right? It's all depending on that crew or that leader that day, what orders he gives, or what individual takes the initiative to do it. So I can say, I would like to say right offhand that we all would do that, but I can't. I've been on calls that I'm like, yeah, that was stupid. We all know better than that. So we have tons of sinkholes. There's tons of tunnels and caves all over the city of St. Louis. Anheuser-Busch used to have tons of tunnels underneath there, and they've either caved in or they've been filled in or they're still up, but nobody's been down there in so many years to even rectify it. So I know downtown and off of Market through those park areas that we've got, that there's actual caves down there. There was a sinkhole down there a few years ago when they were doing some construction, some landscape work. And I think Mario and his crew kind of snuck down in there while things were going on. One of those things where you don't ask permission, just do it, and beg for forgiveness type of deals. But they said they took meters down there and some flashlights, and he said it got pretty sketchy down there. They didn't know what would collapse or what wouldn't. Or they said I don't know how long it'd been since there's no record of anybody being down there, forever, and there was no evidence of. They're like, so yeah, I think we went deep enough. Let's get ourselves out of here. But yeah, it's all over the place. There's a lot of cistern in old warehouses down there that are still there. And
really?
I mean, we've pulled some homeless people out of them that would be staying in this warehouse years ago, and they'd be sitting down in a cistern dead. And then we'd be like, people were like, hey, cops would call us, ask us to help them get the body out and see what happened or what's going on with this. And, but yeah, that was one of the moments we're like, yeah, okay, let's start setting up ropes. Let's figure this out. And they're like, anybody sticking a meter down in this hole? It's like a 60-foot tank that goes down. And it's like full of 40 foot of water that who knows what's in there. I mean, how long it's been in there, more rainwater, I'm sure there's, rodent shit and piss and dead rodents in there. But yeah, there's all kinds, or just like Kimbo, it's been a few years now and I'd forgotten about it earlier when we were talking about experiences, but that a whole pre-World War II safe that we had for a run when we assisted PD. I mean, that ended up being one of the scariest things. And later, once we realized kind of what it was, it kind of blew my mind how nobody else on the crew was really that distraught by the situation. Right. So I don't know if you guys ever heard this story, but we got called to assist the police down the state streets and we get there and they go, yeah, we raided this. It was a mercantile building. So there's a business up front, a little like Quick Mart and cell phone place. Anyway, they said they got a warrant to raid the place and they had an old safe in the back and they wanted to open that up and see if there was any paraphernalia or anything in there. So we get in there and it was a massive safe, probably 4.5 foot tall on the old steel, like rail car looking wheels. And so can you guys get into this? We're like, of course we can. Well, there's nothing we can't get into. It just might take a little time, but
St. Louis City, man. Squad 1A.
That's right.
Squad 1.
Speaking opportunities to serve. So we thought initially our K-12 saws and things like that would get through it, but we realized since we didn't have like a plunger saw, our K-12s wouldn't cut deep enough because it was like 4.5 inches of concrete in between 2 steel plates. So we're like, well, hell. So then we just tried cutting the hinges. It wasn't coming off that way. Then we took a sledgehammer to the front door. Me and Greg Bly did for about 25 minutes, beat the door's ass, and finally it popped open. Well, after it had popped open on the ground, we let the PD kind of go to the side, but I noticed we were taking pictures and such. And while we were using the saw, also, mind you, since we were using a K-12 saw in a small room, they put fans up and blew it out into the storefront. So like the concrete dust and all the smoke and the exhaust from the saw could all kind of be pushed out when we were in this confined room. But anyway, the door plops open and I looked down at the door and there's an outline on the back of the door of, I don't know, it was like something like about this big, and it had 3 little holes on there. I was like, huh, that was interesting. And anyway, the cops were like, all right, go ahead and get out. We got it from here. And we're like, cool. So we get back on the truck. And I recall reading something in a paper on the East Coast years back about a pre-World War II safe used to have, they used to put poison or gas in there. So if somebody were to try to mess and rob, there it is. Thank you. If you guys can see on the door, if you zoom in, you can see where that outline is on that door. There's right in the middle, there's like a hole, and then there's kind of an outline of a long tubular looking thing on the door. But anyway, we're leaving, and there it is. That was what was mounted to the back of the door.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And so anyway, we're getting back to the engine house. I was like, hey, Cap, can we go back there? I go, I think this is a bigger incident than we think it is. And I don't know what happened to that casing. I know that a couple guys kind of kicked things out of the way right away after they'd open up the door. I'm a little nervous. And he's like, about what? And I'm like, it might be mustard gas. And he's like, get the hell out of here. And I'm like, I'm serious. Can we please go? So I kind of made him go back. Well, good. I'm thankful we did. We went back. We found that exact casing. The glass was still intact off to the side. And so we called the hazmat team. Hazmat team really that day didn't know much what to do with it. To speak for him too, that the actual hazmat chief was off duty that day. So we had a riding chief in that day. And so I didn't think, so he called bomb and arson. Bomb and arson came and got it and took it away. Well, I had called Kimbo and I'm like, man, I showed him the pictures and I go, I wonder what the hell that was.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how you got a hold of it, Nick. You kind of continue the story from here.
Yeah. So we got a call from, I think it was County PD or somebody had it. Maybe it was bomb and arson, but they're like, they knew that we had this Raman laser device that we can shoot through glass and identify things, and that as long as the container's got like somewhat clear glass, we can do that. So like, hey, can we bring it over and check it out? And we're like, yeah, that's cool. So I think I was working that day because I've got all these pictures, and so they bring it up. We just I got some intel from you that it came off a safe, so I kind of looked that up too, and I had a little bit of some pre-knowledge to figure out what it was, but so we get it, we bring it into our engine house, and we've changed the way we do things after this, but we bring it into the engine house, like we've got this custom made bay table in the back, right? And that's where we shoot the shit and just hang out. So we put it on there, we get out the meters, like none of us had PPE on. I think I put on a pair of gloves or something, and we get the ramen out and we shoot it, and it comes up with this chloropicrin, and I'm not sure if that's another name for mustard gas, but either way, it's bad shit, right? We're not supposed to have this in the engine house. And funny story, we were literally messing with this thing, and it almost rolled off the edge of the table in the bay, and that would have blown open, and it would have shut down our engine house for God knows how long. So so after that, we definitely changed the way we do things. Like the cops used to bring a lot of stuff to us to test with these instruments. So now if they do that, we set up like at the back of the parking lot, we do full PPE, we pull the truck around, within a safe distance, of course, and we do it that way. But that was really a wake up call, because I think Andy was working too, and he was a captain at the time, and we were just like, bro, we almost like kind of shut down this engine house and became like a laughing stock of the nation, with this textbook case study. So let's not do that again. So, but it's crazy that it came from a call that you guys ran, and it came all the way to our firehouse, and I was messing with it,
Yeah, and all of us mishandled. I mean, I literally watched the bomb and arson guy put it in an ammo can and throw it in the back of his SUV, and I was like, whoa. And then we finally, when then Nick confirmed everything it was, it literally blew my mind that we had something. I mean, and I don't know if you guys are, I know everybody kind of knows that mustard gas or phosgene is terrible, but really looking at the signs and symptoms, I mean, and being in that confined room, like I said, and we had fans going, we would have just, if it would have bursted when we were hitting with the sledgehammer and finally had the door open, I'm sure me and my buddy would not have been feeling too well after that, much less all the people on the outside too, because of those fans were blowing out there. But yeah, just this mishandling and alertness of knowing what it was, or at least treating it like it was like a true hazmat. Like, hey, we don't know what this is. Maybe it's nothing, but to at least all handle it the way we know how to now. But
right.
It was a wild ride the whole time, even from our side to all the way to your side. And
yeah, thank God none of us got exposed or hurt. Talk about exposures. Like, this is like a prime example of why you should just always be vigilant, and sure. call a friend, phone an expert, phone somebody that that can help you out. But man, that's a good story. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was like, man, I think I have some pictures and stuff in my email, so I dug those up.
Yeah. Well, cool.
That's an interesting thing, as far as, like you guys are talking about phone a friend, to call somebody, whatever, right? So it's interesting because, Josh talking about doing more things together, which everybody's knowing each other more and helping out. If this were to happen today, you'd probably now be like, hey man, I heard this story. Here's what I got going on. You would call them. They would probably, I would think maybe the county and the city would work, and this, like, it'd be much different than when it was. Because I remember, and a story similar to that is, when the anthrax powder was coming through St. Louis and whatever.
Yeah.
And, our administration at the time was like, oh, that person's a hazmat tech. Just go put an SCBA on some rubber gloves and see what it is and throw it in the trash can.
Yep.
Looking back now, you're like, oh, shit. Yeah, we can't do that. So it's kind of like the same. You bringing stuff into the engine house, you going back through. People are just smarter now, and I don't think there's as much pride thing in there as like, I got to handle this myself, versus let's just call somebody, handle it, do it by the book, and some people complain about that when you have to do things by the book. But if it's a dud, it's a dud. It's training. Like you said, Kyle, putting the meter down. But, Josh, to your point where you're like, man, I read something. Here's what it is. It's mustard gas, right? And you go through from there. You're never going to get punished, made fun of, when it turns out to be something for real.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you were saying, like firefighter want to do firefighter stuff. Like, I don't think any of us or majority of us, if you call and say, hey, I've got this, I don't know what it is, we're calling out the team, I don't think anybody would complain about, hey, man, I got there, kind of went through the motions anymore. I mean, that's what I found with us of really at my district getting some more buy-in on the hazmat is we were on these calls, and like that one that we had that you went in and saved the day, even though you couldn't see.
It was not the case.
A lot of our guys, like on the way to that, like, how in the world did you get me stuck into this nonsense? And then, like, as soon as we got there, like, hey, you go talk to your friend Andy. Can we get suited up and go down range too?
Can we get into this, bro?
Yeah. And like, so I don't know. And then it's the same thing at the kitchen table. Like you'll see like it's shift change. Guys like, oh yeah, we went on this hazmat call. It didn't wind up being much, but yeah, we still put the suits on. We did this, we trained this, and went through these motions. And I think just anytime you go through that and actually show like, hey, what we bring to the table and get the equipment out and play with it, it's great training, even though if we don't do much, but it's starting to spread. And I found that a lot with our guys of just like getting out and going through the motions it's picking up steam a lot. And so, like you said, it might be a dud, but hey, everybody's safer on the long end of this thing, and everybody got to get out and get a little bit more experience with it. So
it's interesting that you bring that up, Kyle. And St. Louis is a big region, and Josh, and in the city, you guys have a dedicated hazmat. Is it the 28s? Is that the hazmat?
Yeah, 28, Hook and Ladder 5, Squad 2. There's a whole little task force.
So they're made up similar to us, but in the county, there's a couple heavy rescues, like a true heavy rescue. Kyle, you cross staff yours. Some of our others are manned or whatever. But what I find interesting is the hazmat team. Nick, you guys have it at your station. It's really you. It was Pattonville. I'm not throwing smoke on them. I don't know how involved they are. Kirkwood does decon, and then Kyle, you guys out at Metro are coming out. That's it. I mean, if you really think about how many times we've pulled the trigger, getting heavy rescues going somewhere where you're like, oh yeah, let's pop it, or it's built in the CAD or whatever. I don't think we use the team nearly as much as we should.
Yeah.
Accidents.
Yeah.
CO, I'm not saying for CO calls, but I mean, you could, some big cities pop them on there, second alarms, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's a lot more you can do with the team, but then it comes down to funding and getting people.
Staffing.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very unfortunate, but I mean, you could, like you said, Kyle, more reps, right? So we're doing a lot of rescue stuff. Guys are into it. They're fresh on it. When's the last time you put a suit on, Kyle, on a call?
On a call?
Yeah,
Last one. Yeah, that night.
So, I mean, Nick, how often do you guys think the team gets to put actually suit up? On squat? 2, 3?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
What about you guys down in the city, Josh?
I don't know. I can't speak for the hazmat team. I don't know how much they do or don't. And I think it's kind of back to what I was saying before, too. I think it's shift dependent and leader dependent on how much training they actually do in themselves. So I'm sure it's probably a lot for some guys and probably minimal for others. So,
yeah. I will say, at least for my guys at my place, it's just like anywhere. It's kind of hard to get them motivated on hazmat, but I've got a few that are interested in the science and whatever. But after you run a call and you actually do stuff, and they actually figure out that they actually know things, like, dude, give yourself some credit. I'm not the only one that does hazmat here. Like,
Right.
more than you think you do. And if you let them do stuff, like these past couple of calls that we've had, at least on C shift, I'll go in as like a team lead, like the officer, and I make them do all the stuff. Like, and I'll talk them through it. And it's like, hey, I'm right here. I'll talk on the radio, but I want you to do the sampling. I want you to run the meters. I want you to think through this stuff, because when I'm not here, you're going to have to do this on your own. And I want you to be comfortable with that. And I'm sure it's the same thing with tech rescue. Like, hey man, I want you to set up this 4-to-1 or this Z rig or whatever. We're gonna do a rappel rescue here. I want you to do it. I'll let you know if you're really screwing things up, and we'll correct it together. But I want you to do it so that when the call happens and I'm out of town in Florida or on vacation, that you can get it done. So,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean it. But a lot of that just comes with, and you two are starting to do good things on there. It just comes with training and then call outs. This is not my side. I'm on the other side of the room there. I don't know how busy you want to be, but just like with our rescue truck we were talking about earlier, right? All you got to do is ask. You want to put that thing on runs? You can put that thing on runs. It's just a matter of what's there. And the more times the guys do it, like Kyle said, they're coming back. They're interested now.
Right.
Metro West is actually sending people to hazmat calls. They're doing trainings. They're doing in-house stuff. So that's something we could definitely work on in the future.
For sure.
But I mean, look at big cities. Big cities have staffed hazmat crews, and they're running everything.
Yeah. And a lot of them, they have to do that because they can't afford to outfit every truck with a 4-gas or a 5-gas. With us, it's different. We're fortunate in this area that, at least in the county, that everybody has the money to do that for their own department. But bigger cities, they can't do that, so they have to have the hazmat on stuff. So.
Well, and you know as well as I do that if you're able to justify getting a piece of equipment and training guys put on it, and then you don't have any kind of call volume to justify keeping it, it'll be taken from you. So doing like what Chief Wilcox did and going out there and knocking on doors and getting that opportunity. And Nick, I'd love to have you guys come out and start talking. Like Tim Schultz is a good one for that because he was on Squad 2 for a long time. Just knowing some guys out there and Weffelmeyer's a great dude for that. But getting to be like, hey man, can we come over and look at your guys' stuff? I'm sure there's a lot of guys on there that are old school techs like I am. Like, yeah, we were heavy into all that stuff, took all the classes years ago, but I haven't touched a lot of that. And since I've been on Rescue Squad 1, I haven't really touched much hazmat. It's been very technical rescue heavy, not hazmat heavy. So using you guys and then you'll have an understanding of what equipment they have, and then vice versa what you'll have. So then you might be calling each other a lot more often. Like I think we had a fire at Procter & Gamble the other day, and they burned a building down. And the report I got from the guy that I relieved that morning was, and he's a great dude, so I'm not, but he was like, yeah, we had a fire at Procter & Gamble. And I was like, ooh, that doesn't sound good. And he's like, yeah, I think we pretty much lost the building over there. And he goes, I don't remember what building number it was. He goes, but they said all that purple water coming out of the building was nothing to worry about. And he walks off, and I'm like,
all right.
Yeah, sounds about right. You know what I mean? But just for that, like something, and I'm sure Squad 2 was involved in that fire, especially at a big commercial building like that. If they had a working fire, then I'm sure at least won a couple alarms. But so calling the guys like that, like, hey, what happened? What kind of after action reports you guys find out? What chemicals were in that building? So just reaching out and doing exactly what you guys are doing, having guys on podcasts, having conversations, and just having conversations amongst each other will bring more conversations to your guys' show and more interesting scenarios to bring up to have conversations about. So,
no doubt. And
I think, like you guys had mentioned, is so important. And I know that we all get a little lazy when it comes to doing what we say we're going to do all the time, but like turning every call and every incident into a training scenario should be a must.
Mm-hmm.
And that's dependent on the crew and the leader. Absolutely. But if you get called out and you get returned, you're like, hey, I don't need you anymore. Like I know Mario's really good at this, is if they get called out for a vehicle extrication and they get turned around, because in the city it's a big thing. The trucks want to get the guys out before the squad gets there. So they try to get them, and they love to turn them around as soon as they pull up, right? Yeah, squad, we got them out. We don't need you no more. But Mario still fit and get there and take a look at everything. Say, hey, what'd you guys do? What didn't you guys do? Okay, and then he just wants to look at this, and he gets all his guys off. He goes, let's take a look at this. What would we have done? If we would have been first here or second here or whatever. But turning every call into a training scenario is detrimental to how efficient and how good we are at our jobs. We can all have egos and say we're good, take a few classes, read a few books, sit around the engine house and play and call ourselves a good hazmat guy or a good rope guy or something. But unless you're actually putting hands on and doing that mental over and over and over and over again, it's I don't know. It's something I think, I know we all want to do it, and I know we all have, especially us sitting here talking, I know we push this stuff, but getting your crews to do it, or getting the whole company involved, or getting the whole house involved, or the whole department involved, there's totally different animals. So
Yeah. There's an
Yeah,
FDNY guy that says, you know, you're only as good as your last fire, so you're only as good as your last hazmat call, or you know, whatever.
100%.
Schultz is actually one of the next guys coming up on here. I've reached out to him and talked to him just the other day about coming and hanging out with us. So he's
Fantastic.
that's one guy I will say I've known him for a while and gotten the opportunity to travel and teach with him. Is he's really dove into this hazmat stuff like big time since he's got moved into companies and stuff like that. And so that's one humble dude that really just wants to learn, and like he's So I'd love to hear about pictures on.
I wish every engine house and every company had a Matt Wilcox. I mean, not a Matt Wilcox. Fuck it.
That's a
Tim man. I got it.
Yeah.
But no, Tim Schultz is solid. He is top tier. I'd say that. So I'm happy to hear you guys want to have him on. He's a fucking stud. So
yeah,
yes,
he'd be good. It was that phone call was the typical Tim Schultz. Like, hey man, I need you to come on here. Oh, you don't want me? I don't know anything. Like, oh, you got plenty to bring to the table, buddy. Like, so,
I think we're gonna do a Schultz Phillips combo on that one. We'll have Josh back.
I'd love to be on it with Schultz. If I can be there with Schultz, I can be underneath his shadow and it'd be perfect. You make me look good. So
you mentioned Whifflemeyer, like that would just be an epic beatdown if we brought him on. If Schultz just picked on him.
You guys are definitely gonna have to make it rated R first and foremost. And then just make it an empty blanket of time, because I'm sure the rants on there would just last hours.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
No, I think a lot of this. I mean, this is great stuff. I know I've leaned on Wilcox quite a bit every time B shift is working, and you hear something go out in the county. He usually gets a text from me like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure you need to add 46 to this just to get us rolling on it." So I'm trying to pad my numbers to build those experiences for our guys. But I mean, turning everything into a training is huge. Like I've really tried to hone that with some of the guys on my shift of taking the little things and just building those, because there's so much that anybody can take away from it. Same with the hazmat, like we were talking, like putting all the tools on the trucks, right? So like that's one of the biggest things I've come across is trying to get all of our non-hazmat techs to realize like, hey, every truck has these Stay Alive 5 kits on there. Like every truck has that use it. And most of them are like, oh, we're not hazmat techs, so we're not touching this stuff. It's like, man, like you can't wait. Like this is decision-making time, and stuff like that has to be made well before we show up and do anything. So, but
no, that's a good point. We did, you learn about your 4 gas or your 5 gas meter, and then, you got your numbers and you figure out what it is. To your point, unless it's beeping, guys really don't say anything,
right?
For the most part, right? On all of them. So we ended up doing Taylor Tins makes a metal card, and it's got all your readings on it for all your gases, and it's got the explanation of symptoms, how long you can be there. So it's almost, I don't want to say it's firefighter proof, but hey, here's a number, and you correspond with it. So that's a huge one. Another one, you talk about incidents, right? It did not happen in our town, but we've heard this before. You go to a person with a headache, Kyle, we've talked about this. Person with a headache, whatever, you're going in there. How many times the guys just going on an EMS call and they turn out there is something to it? So we ended up, you can buy a single gas monitor that's always on. It lasts for 2 years.
Yep. So
all of our cardiac monitors have a metal band on them, and there's a CO monitor on there. So if the crew's going in there and they're just thinking it's a BS call, or it's their frequent flyer or whatever, that thing starts firing off. It's a safety mechanism for them, but then also, hey, CO wasn't on my mind, and bam, so simple things, you guys all alluded to it, training, just doing things to make better, but then put that on the monitor so that we can talk about different things of CO, where you encounter it and so forth like that. There's hazmat everywhere. It's on the EMS call, on the rescue side, fires, you're going in there with the seeing what your readings are. Can you take the mask off? Can you not? What's the CO level and so forth? I mean, we're using meters way more than we used to for everything.
Absolutely.
You guys ever? Does any of you guys? Since I'm not assigned to a full-time hazmat team like that in my city, but you guys use your dosimeters often? Is it something you guys train on? I mean, you guys checking out your normal backgrounds in your areas and industrial areas versus your residential areas and all that? Is it just kind of one of those things? Like, I know for us, like if I ask you guys, have you checked the dosimeter lately? Has it got batteries in it? Well, where's that at? What's that?
Yeah.
All right. Let me show you, kid. Come here.
No, yeah, I will say on my end, and we probably should be doing more of that, but unless it's like a weekly check when we're doing it,
Right.
or we have it out for training for like the Stay Alive 5, we're not really checking that on a regular basis. We should. That's a good point, but yeah.
I think it's just something just like we were talking about, just getting it. Like if you guys get some kind of hazmat incident, get the new guy or get one of the guys, be like, hey, go grab that, go check it out, see what it is, have them run through it again, see what, you know what I mean? Just for the practice and the reminder of utilizing a tool that is there.
Right.
And it, anyway.
Just get a rep.
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's the same thing. We have them on all 5 of our pumpers and then one on our heavy rescue. But I know it comes off and gets checked during the SOP for that week, just because, like, at least at my house, because I've got some techs and I actually see them pull it off, and it's one of those like, oh, well, you guys are actually making sure this stuff gets checked, and not open it up a year from now and all the batteries be corroded in there and everything.
Right.
Those things aren't cheap.
No, they're not.
But yeah, that's a good point, and that's one of those things. Like, we put them on all of our trucks, and that was the first thing. Guys like, well, I'm not touching this. I'm not a hazmat tech. It's like, well, no, it's meant for everybody.
Yeah. Bullshit.
So, but yeah. No, that's a good point. Getting those off. The same with our. We've started with some of our array products. Is my BC's in charge of all the meters, and he's got a unique way of tasking people to help him with stuff. It's more or less he'll give them a little bit, and the next thing you know, you've got this entire project. Kind of how I fell into the hazmat world of things. But he started doing that and tapping several people to help with the meters, and then they kind of take that ownership of that, and then you see. Like, we'll get one of the guys will come up and say, oh, my meter needs this done to it or this. And you'll get 3 or 4 people like, oh, I got that. Hey, Kyle, I need the keys to the cabinet. I'll go in and change out these sensors, or I'll do this. So it's been one of those, like, giving some people some ownership of it. And it's really kind of grown a little bit with us. So cool. We still get plenty of people that, like, have nothing to do and want nothing to do, like, with any of that. But, like, it's slowly buying some. But that goes back to the training and running the calls and like anything else. So,
right.
Sure.
Well, this has been great stuff, man. We're just at like almost an hour here, so we try and target for an hour and a half. But we're at the end of the question list, but I'll ask this one for Chief Wilcox. But in the future, what do you think is the most likely disaster scenario for the future? I know we talked about floods have been pretty prevalent lately and hurricanes, but what are you thinking? What's your vision of the future for disasters and responding to these things?
Yeah. I'd say floodings, hurricanes. It was a busy hurricane season. We have busy ones, we have short ones. Locally, I can say for me in Maplewood is flooding. We've had some flooding incidents in the 15 years I've been there. In the past 3 years, I want to say we've had significant flooding in the past 3 years, 2 or 3 times, to the point where boats are getting deployed, teams are coming in, and those are supposed to be your 100, 500-year rains. Well, getting 8 to 10 inches overnight is kind of turning into a common thing, unfortunately. And we're seeing these little bands come in that just drop a shitload of rain in a spot. So Afton and Lee got hit. Kyle, you guys got hit out west when we were going to Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of it where it's going to come from. Hold on, I got to jump on here because everybody's coming home. Most of it's
I think we lost you here, Matt, for a second.
Yeah. We get him back?
No. Well, let's switch
Man.
over. Let's switch over to Josh real quick, and then we'll get Matt back here.
First I'd like to say, since he's getting closer to the screen, he is ugly. I mean, he is.
Oh,
Anyway,
So-
I don't know. For the city, or at least regionally in city, I know we've had tornadoes and floods have been a big deal in the greater St. Louis and Southern Illinois area for sure, right? I don't know what. Obviously, I don't see them slowing down any. But also, my biggest scare is for the time that elapses in between the runs and the lack of maybe some of the training and some of the experience and some of the readiness. That's what kind of makes me nervous because, in the last few years, our department's been changing quite a bit. A lot of the older guys are retiring. We got quite a few new guys coming on. And so my more concern is the readiness of the so-called task force and the teams that are supposed to be deployed to these things and the actual experience and readiness and training they're going to have. That's my concern is because, we're always getting called to the worst times of other people's lives and the worst scenarios. So that you want to show up as your best. You want to put your best foot forward and make a difference and make an impact and be able to make things better for a moment in time. But when you're unable to do that and you don't have the resources, you don't have the capable people to get the job done, there's a lot of decisions that start getting made that steer away from the goal, and time becomes your enemy. So, right. So that's my biggest concern and that's why I'm not to give you more pat on the back, Mr. Wilcox, but I really appreciate that some of the training opportunities you keep building. And not only is it good for all the individual firemen and some of the captains and leadership to see this stuff themselves and know how to make calls on the scene, but it's also opening the eyes of these chiefs and these guys that are maybe too focused on apparatus or too focused on manpower or too focused on, all the things that they juggle as well. But now you're kind of opening their eyes to what my guys are going to have to deal with and what decisions I'm going to have to make. And I want to know who my resources are. I want to know what things around me, who can I call? You know what I mean? So that's my little tidbit on that. I'm not sure what lies in the future. I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, so I think there's a little bit of maybe EMP things going on or some power outages and I'm worried about people's and their money and the banks and the foods and water and all that stuff. So you never know.
Yeah, I think you hit like pretty big there with guys retiring and that. I mean, we've had a few at my place that like they've gone out the door. It's like, man, that one really hurts. Like that's some knowledge and experience. And I agree. I mean, we're seeing a lot of that knowledge going out the door, and like we're getting a lot of really cool tools and toys and all this stuff with all the rope and all this stuff. But that knowledge of how the basic stuff works is leaving is huge.
Yep.
I've got a couple of our newer guys that are so like, oh, we've got this cool toy. It's like, oh, you need to slow down a little bit because you forgot all of this because you want to go forward. I mean, that's a huge one. And then going back to the training, like that's really how you slow that stuff down. We've had some of these bigger trainings that where you can put it all together and they can see like, oh shit, I can't go 10 steps forward because we have to concentrate on the big picture and everything. So no, that's a huge one. Like that sucks having some of these senior guys leave. So
oh man, yeah, it's devastating. It's devastating to the culture. It's devastating. I mean, I think this is across the board, across the nation, across the world. But back when Matt, like you said, when firemen used to be able to be firemen and do fireman shit, a lot of that's gone away today with policies, procedures, safety concerns. A lot of us have what's that old terminology, paralysis by analysis. Mm-hmm. Got a lot of guys that aren't able to make quicker decisions because number one, they either lack the experience or two, they're too worried about getting somebody hurt or injured or whatever. But I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, and I'm sure most of you guys agree with me. But I took an oath to risk limb and life. So I'm not scared to put myself out there. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I want to do a bunch of stupid shit where I don't come home at night for some silly reason. But at the same time, I signed up for this job. That's what makes this job. That's why people like us. That's why people wave at us instead of spitting on us like they do a lot of the police, unfortunately. But that's why they like us. The moment we quit doing that for people and the moment we quit putting ourselves out there, and risking ourselves to help people is going to be the moment that people start treating us a lot different. And you won't have the kids waving at us down the street, and you won't have the kids coming to the firehouse wanting to put that helmet on it and take pictures. And it's going to drastically change if we don't change. And so by losing those old heads and those guys, that's hurting us big time. Because it's not really, I know a couple of guys personally before they left, they did what they could for the last 2 years to really put down a rule of law around the engine house. Like, hey, if you're the new guy, you're the first one, you're the last one to start eating. You're the first one to get up and start doing dishes. You're the first one to get up and clean all the shitters. And if you see anybody on scene who's older than you or is a captain, he's working, you take that tool from him and you start working, and you be the last one to quit working. So, I mean, and there's a lot of things like that, I'm sure all of you guys have to deal with this, but there's a lot of newer guys that are coming on. That culture isn't really given to them. And we're like, well, I'm tired. Well, I don't want to do that. Or I don't know, is that really safe? I don't want to do that. As opposed to just trusting their senior guys or their leadership and just, basically taking orders, so to speak. And I know we can go on a caveat about that all day, because there's a lot of things to learn from in the past that we have learned from today. And that's why we make different decisions. But at the same time, just as a whole, the culture is like, so when we're talking about incidents, that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is the lack of training, the lack of culture, the lack of experience. And we're losing a lot right now. I know all of us are. I know everybody's having a hard time hiring, and we're losing more than we're able to hire. Mm-hmm. And the quality of candidates out there is less and less and less,
right?
At least in my opinion. So there are a lot of good guys coming on. We've just had a class come out, and there's some stuff, you're worried about these young guys in the academy, and they show up on the job. We've got a couple right now, and I'm like, all right, kid, you're doing a good job. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to start doing. And so it gives you hope, you know what I mean? So, but I guess that's another tangent for another day, but
yeah. So one more challenge question for you, Josh, because you're doing the TAC medic stuff down there, and we've started running into some of this on the county team with the TAC medics. Are you guys doing much hazmat stuff with your SWAT team at all down there?
No, I won't. I mean, in terms of hazmat, I'd say no. Now they're big on the breaching and explosives and things like that, and we get to play part in that every once in a while, especially if the bomb and arson team's involved. But in terms of hazmat, no. I don't know if they do a very good job of mitigating that themselves, or if they're relying on somebody else that I'm not aware of. But they keep us around for anything that they're going to do when they're going to play with explosives or play with any kind of hazardous materials, and they may call us out and go, hey, what do you think? But we're not necessarily assigned to them while they're doing a lot of that stuff. Bomb and arson, we are quite a bit. Like if they're going out having a class that day, or they're going out to blow a bunch of stuff up or do some training, they'll call a few of us out to just kind of do standby with them and hang out and learn and do whatever. But no, I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe I have. You tell me what you guys have been doing. And
ours was more like the fentanyl and some of the warrants and stuff, depending on what it is. Like we've actually had to start training our TAC guys in SCBA and
really
IVEX suits and stuff like that out.
That's fantastic.
It kind of goes along too, like when we were talking about like training these guys on forcible entry. So we've kind of had to switch gears a little bit just because some of the houses we're going into for search warrants aren't really sure what they're getting into. So I didn't know if you guys were doing much with that down there at all with your city guys.
I mean, don't get me wrong, all that is a huge issue, right? Where we are as well. I'm not sure. Now that you bring that up, I'm gonna make some phone calls today, and I'm gonna see if it's something they're doing on their end without us, and doing some like maybe federal training or something like that with some other teams. But in terms of us, to my knowledge, they haven't really. I mean, they make some phone calls like, "Hey, what do you guys think?" Or "Hey, do you guys want to come check this out?" Or they may call one of the squad captains on that day and be like, "Hey, you guys want to come over and check this out? We just raided this place. What do you think this is?" But no, but they're not necessarily like coming to us and going, "Hey, can we have like a 4 to 8 hour class on this and that and teach it?" We do a lot with bleeding control and hemorrhage and stuff like that, and like TAC medic type of trainings with them. But hazmat, no. But that's a good point to bring up, and I'll definitely see if we can inherit that mindset. So
yeah, that was big a couple of years ago on the county side, was doing all that. But I just realized too, they've got a couple of our guys dedicated to hazmat on the county TAC team. Like I didn't realize that we were taking a class and the TAC guys started showing up. It's like, what in the world are you doing here for? Like, oh no, this is our baby. So, and they actually volunteered to come take an 8 hour hazmat class that was geared for firefighters. And so knowing some of that stuff on the flip side, like, man, you guys are even the cops are getting into this stuff. So somebody's doing something right. So
there you go. That's excellent.
So,
hell yeah.
Cool.
So somebody's got some good leadership. I like to hear that.
Yeah. So wrapping stuff up here, Nick, unless you got some more stuff to.
No, I think we should move on to the these last questions about.
Guys, what's some advice for like fellow firefighters and training officers trying to get into anything? Doesn't have to be hazmat. Matt, I know you're big with the training and everything, and then we were talking about some of the newer guys coming on the job. So what's some advice for just moving forward?
You guys hear me? No, I'm back.
Yeah.
Good?
There we go.
Okay. Honestly, most of it is the big thing is I just ask the crews, what are we short on? You know, as far as anybody can be a training officer, private all the way to a chief. You know, we learn a lot on calls. You know, learn a lot from your screw ups. I like going on calls. You know, I like hearing about calls, so I'll learn about different things that happened and make notes and then just talk with the crew. But the big things, you know, it doesn't have to be your training doesn't have to be this big ordeal thing. A simple conversation like we're having here at the kitchen table, you can take a lot of things away. You know, with all the new guys, you know, it sounds very cliche. Josh, I'm sure you can, it's like this down at the city, you know, just listen. You can learn a lot from listening.
100%.
You know, a lot of guys, to what Josh was saying, guys were either in the trades or did something before. A lot of guys, no fault of them, they're coming out of their parents' basement and have their first full-time job, you know, and they're still living at home and whatever else. So just listen and find that old guy at work that's been there forever and just pick his brain. Honestly, that's really it. It will come. Just be patient. You know, Kyle, like you were saying, you got all these new guys that like new toys and all this other stuff. I need this. You know, take your time and learn the craft first. It will come.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna bounce off that same thing, Chief. Is my biggest thing is like, you know, we've always been being in the fire service. We wear many hats, right? And so to be really good at a bunch of them is very difficult, especially if you're not staying up on things and consistently working on things and challenging yourself and having scenario-based training and I think we build a lot of training scars for ourselves. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to get on an NFPA tangent, but there's a lot of things that come with that, and there's a lot of misunderstandings and misrepresentations and interpretations of what a lot of that stuff it means, and a lot of it's recommendations. It's not a law. So I think, you know, us training with dummies all the time, I think is a huge training scar. Patient packaging is huge. And the fact that we're doing it on dummies all the time, not realizing what's comfortable, what's not, what's hurting, what's impeding, what's restraining people from breathing properly, what's, you know, all the stuff. Like, I think there's stuff like that. And so if you incorporate the dummy aspect into hazmat or into confined space or to structural collapse or to any scenario thing that we're doing, use real people as often as possible. So, and I guess what more I'm going to is, and I know this is all, everything that I believe in, I think it rises and falls on your immediate leadership, right? All the way to the top to your, maybe your senior guy or the guy that's willing to step up on your crew or your captain. But if the department doesn't have a standard of training constantly, or whatever your specialty is, or whatever all your responsibilities are supposed to be, if you don't have a schedule out there, like, hey, every week we're touching this, next week we're touching this, next week we're touching that. If they're not setting that for you, then set it for yourselves.
Right.
I mean, build a culture yourself. You know what I'm saying? You can do that as a crew, and as opposed to a whole house or a whole shift or whatever. But do it for yourselves. Have the confidence in one another, and build a crew that you guys will be proud to work together, and that you're like, we're the alpha crew. We work so hard. We put ourselves through. We got a couple crews, and I know Wilcox, we've talked about this, but and I know I've said his name a few times, but Mario Montero is phenomenally known to do this. His guys know that they have to pack a fucking lunch every day they come to work. Once they leave the engine house in the morning, they are not coming back till dinner time or after. and he is phenomenally known to get crews the day before and go, hey, take this dummy or take this guy and put him all the way up on that street sign above the highway, and we're just going to stroll by it tomorrow. And that's what he'll do. He'll have his guys out training all day doing one thing, and they'll be like, hey, let's go get lunch. And then he'll drive by on the highway, and he'll be like, you guys see that? Oh, my God. And he'll pull over and go. You know what I mean? He'll do it to them all day long. And there's a huge confidence and camaraderie between those guys that is definitely different than most other crews. It's because they struggle together. That's exactly the difference. But they stay up on their craft, just like we're talking about, right? They know their responsibilities as a heavy rescue squad, and they stay up on them every single day. And to mention what we were talking about, the old school stuff versus the new school stuff, right? Like where I come from, Chief Wilcox had mentioned, you came from a craft. You were a carpenter, you were an electrician, you were a good fireman, and that's how you got sent to a heavy rescue squad, or you got sent to a hazmat squad, or whatever. You already had some kind of skill, so you'd already proven to them that you can learn and acquire and master some kind of craft. Well, today a lot of it's classes, and a lot of it's certifications, and a lot of it's new gadgets, new gizmos, and all that stuff. And a lot of the old heads don't want to touch that stuff. So now there's this big impeding difference between the old heads that know the old school stuff. The new kids maybe don't really want to learn that because it's not cool and it's not hip. And then they got all this new equipment that the old guys are like, what do you need that for? Just give me a brake rack bar and we're good to go. I don't need that damn clutch. You know what I mean? So there's a big barrier there right now in the rescue world, and it's got to be that way in hazmat forever, right? That's all hazmat ever does is comes out with new equipment, new tech information. It's a lot to learn, especially be proficient at it and be good at it. So I guess my recommendation would be, first and foremost, captains or senior men, step up, and even if you don't feel like it, even if you guys take naps on your middle days or whatever it is you guys do as a crew, but every day stepping out and getting on something or putting on something or getting it out, opening it up, turning it on, running it through its motions, doing it every single day with every single thing that's on that truck is what's going to make the difference ultimately. So like I said, if the department doesn't have the rule, then just set it for yourselves. So
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. I think the only last thing that we had, I know Josh, you're a big reader. I know we talk about books that we've both read all the time, but fire service related, do you what's like your favorite book? Fire service related.
Oh, that's tough, man.
I know I'm putting it on your spot.
There's so many books out there. But I'll say, since this is a hazmat podcast and we are incorporating USAR in it, I am going to say The Hot Zone by Richard Preston.
Oh, that's a good one. I love that one.
That's and only because of, there's so many good fire service books out there, but for this podcast, I'd have to say that one. It's an older book, but man, is it amazing. And it actually, in its time, kind of helped develop a lot of what we do today. If I remember right, it was written in like 1994 or 96, and Clinton was in office in 98.
Yeah, Clinton. Yep.
And Clinton read that book, and it disturbed him greatly.
Yep.
And he made a lot of changes and did a lot of investigations on bioterrorism and went into that, and it helped shape a lot of FEMA and Department of Homeland Security procedures and trainings from there. So I think that's a pretty good book for this podcast. So
100%. What about you, Chief? What do you think?
Green eggs and ham.
Appreciate that. Behind green eggs and ham and scratch and sniffs.
That's a good one.
I probably have to put out there, in the leadership role is Extreme Leadership by Jocko.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read it.
Oh yeah.
When I moved up, you're in a leadership role, so learning about that and kind of taking an interest in it. And he pulls no punches. It's no bullshit. It's whatever happens is based off of you. So what you were just talking about, Josh, set the tone, do everything from there. That book just emulates it. It's a great book to read because it talks about him as a leader, talks about them doing it out in the field, which you can. It's not the same, but it is the same in the fire service. Your crew screws up, it's 100% on you. It doesn't matter because either you didn't tell him something, they made a mistake because you review. It's 100% on you. So great book, good read. A lot of life lessons you can take out of that one.
I like it.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Well, Kyle, you got anything else?
No, this has been great. I think this another good one, and we kept it PG, so it's even better.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, for sure.
So, thank you guys. I really appreciate jumping on here with us this morning, having these conversations. So this is all great stuff, and love to see the city and the county and all the same things on both ends. So
100%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
I appreciate you having us on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Chief, don't you still owe me money?
In what regard? 'Cause if anything, I think you owe me something. I mean, you know, I need this, I'll cover this, or we'll work for this. Or TTR said we'll do this. Yeah, I understand how that